Good afternoon, welcome. I'm Digby Ricci, and this is the first of a series of lectures entitled Enriching English. We begin our lecture series with a celebration of the genius of William Shakespeare. We shall be brushing up the bard. This lecture is the first of three 20-minute lectures on Shakespeare's great tragedy of love and power politics, Antony and Cleopatra. Antony and Cleopatra could accurately be described as a work that is both epic and intimate. In the astonishingly cinematic manner, Shakespeare cuts from Rome to Egypt, and back again. And scholars who are more mathematically minded than I am have informed us that this play actually presents us with 31 named characters, and it is presented in 42 separate scenes. So it is certainly an epic work, spanning time and place. On the other hand, it is also a psychologically probing study of two remarkable figures who try to achieve a complete humanity through their love relationship. One of the most extraordinary aspects of Shakespeare's genius is his refusal ever to oversimplify. In his works, he constantly shatters our simplistic expectations and destroys stereotypes that might be embedded in our minds. Think of another great Shakespearean tragedy that I'm sure you all know, Shakespeare's Macbeth. In that play, Macbeth is blood-soaked usurper, regicide, but also self-disgusted, highly imaginative, philosophizing warrior who is agonizingly aware of the virtues of his victims, and especially of his kingly victim, the gracious Duncan. Think too of how Shakespeare humanizes the understandably embittered and vengeful Jewish usurer Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. Shylock's great "hath not a Jew eyes" speech is one of the most moving pleas for shared humanity ever penned. Therefore, it is not at all surprising that in Antony and Cleopatra, Shakespeare's eponymous lovers fluctuate between the magnificent and the trivial, the sublime and the ridiculous. After all, they are fully human beings, and the complexity of their love relationship is, of course, absolutely central to the play. It is very important that you do not oversimplify this great text, for Shakespeare does not permit us to do so. The very opening of the play suggests how ambivalent and complex and multifaceted the drama is going to be. Two Roman soldiers appear on the stage, and they are in discussion. Demetrius has arrived in Egypt, and Philo appears to be responding to an observation that Demetrius has just made. Philo launches into a denunciation of Mark Antony's absurdly obsessive infatuation, his dotage. According to Philo, Antony's martial power, his political acumen, his glory as a leader have all been debased. He is no more than a besotted idiot, a strumpet's fool, and he has become, in a sense, an erotic plaything, the bellows and the fan, to cool a gypsy's lust. Antony and Cleopatra themselves enter, and Philo calls upon Demetrius to observe them. He utters the command, "Behold and see." But in a sense, that command is directed at us, the readers of the play or the viewers of a production of the play. We are asked to observe and make up our own minds. And we soon discover that the union of Antony and Cleopatra cannot be glibly dismissed as the union of a hen-pecked lecher and manipulative seductress. They are talking about their love, and Cleopatra playfully invites Antony to define it. Antony, however, insists that any love that can be quantified is reduced, and it will require a new universe to accommodate and define his love. His soaring rhetoric gives to their love a spiritual dimension. Indeed, when Antony stresses that a new heaven and a new earth would be required to accommodate his love, the lines contain a deliberately anachronistic allusion to a passage from the book of Revelations, chapter 21, verses 1 and 2. And behold, I saw a new heaven, a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had vanished away. There is no question that such language intensifies the grandeur and the spirituality of the lovers' relationship. And also Antony's dismissal of the power of Rome, let Rome in Tiber melt, certainly indicates that even at this stage of the play, there is within Antony an awareness of the fact that even the greatest powers on earth are limited. Victory and conquest are transient. They can be very short-lived. On our dungy earth, kingdoms are, as Antony is very well aware, simply clay. Antony's imagery of disintegration, he speaks of the arch of the ranged empire crumbling, suggests his commitment to mutual love in Egypt, changeable, shifting, like the Nile itself, sometimes bringing plenty and fertility, on other occasions drought, as opposed to the rigidity of Rome. He is the triple pillar of the world, but he is dedicating himself to a more flexible and complex definition of human existence. The condemnatory attitude of Philo towards Mark Antony could be said to be the prevailing attitude of Antony's Roman opponents and detractors. One could describe it as the Octavius Caesar stereotype of Antony. Throughout the text, the Romans rail against Antony's lascivious behavior, his amorous surfeits. He is adulterous Antony, and his famous mistress is salt Cleopatra. Salt in that context is an adjective meaning lascivious or lustful. The Roman view then is that Antony has been utterly degraded by his commitment to Cleopatra, and he has dedicated himself to an Egyptian world of decadence and disorder. However, Shakespeare very soon makes us aware of the fact that the Roman claim that their world represents order, rationality, and control, as opposed to the decadence of Egypt, is fundamentally false. Right from the beginning of the play, Rome is associated with disorder and violence. The very passions, the lust for power concealed within the Romans make their state a state that is in perpetual conflict. At the beginning of the play, the garboils, a wonderful word meaning the turbulence, the unrest, the conflicts, caused by the shrill-tongued Fulvia, Antony's remarkable and militant wife, compel Antony to leave his Egyptian enchantress and return to Rome. Pirates, inspired by the resentful son of Pompey the Great, harass Roman shipping and in fact threaten Roman food supplies. There's the ongoing power conflict between Mark Antony and Octavius Caesar. And the Roman populace itself is extraordinarily fickle, changeable in its loyalty to political leaders. Octavius Caesar himself memorably describes the Roman populace as like a reed tossed about by opposing currents. As he puts it, a vagabond flag upon the stream. Shakespeare thus stresses the fact that the Roman insistence that its world represents order as opposed to disorder is a view that shows very little self-awareness. There's no recognition among the Roman opponents of Antony and Cleopatra of the fact that all people are dominated by passions and weaknesses. Whatever their faults and weaknesses, Antony and Cleopatra are more than capable of recognizing that they are multifaceted human beings, and such a definition will require a knowledge of both virtues and vices. Roman self-glorification shows a lack of self-awareness, and this is a very important point to remember in your study of the play. In Act 1, Scene 4, Octavius Caesar laments the fact that Antony has changed so radically. He reminisces about Antony's remarkable behavior on the retreat from Medina, the agonizing retreat from Medina, some years previously. During that retreat, Antony drank the urine of horses and water from slime-mantled pools. He ate berries and the roughest bark of trees. And these actions he performed so courageously and with such endurance that his cheeks lanked not. His cheeks did not even grow pale and thin. Now there is no question that Octavius Caesar's description of Antony on that retreat is the description of a great hero. But the Roman definition of heroism, courage, military might, uncomplaining endurance, is a limited one. The imagery that Octavius Caesar uses of Mark Antony on the retreat for Medina is imagery that suggests a magnificent beast. He makes that comparison explicit when he states that Antony was like a stag when snow mantles the earth. It is a remarkable image, but it is not the only image of manhood. In Antony and Cleopatra, Antony himself resists the Roman stereotype. He sees it as limiting, and he insists on being permitted to live life to the full, to be more than simply a mighty warrior and an idealized member of the triumvirate. The contradictions, the many facets of his relationship with Cleopatra are summed up for us in the opening scenes of the play. In Act 1, Scene 2, for example, Antony describes Cleopatra as being cunning beyond man's thoughts, and he sees her as a corrupting enchantress whom he must leave. The idleness of his life in Egypt must be abandoned. However, in the very same scene, he plans to ask Cleopatra's permission to leave Egypt. He states that he must gain her leave to depart. Cleopatra also rejoices in the complexity of Mark Antony. She sees him as a man who is composed of a heavenly mingle of qualities and vices, and she delights in this heavenly mingle as much as Antony's Roman opponents distrust it. Enobarbus, one of the most extraordinary figures in this play, who is both cynic and admirer when it comes to Cleopatra, close friend of Antony and yet sharp-tongued critic of Antony's policies and military strategies, a man who could be defined as having a foot in both the Roman camp and the Egyptian camp, sums up Mark Antony's dilemma very well. Cleopatra is, as Enobarbus concedes, a wonderful piece of work. And yet the very qualities that make her wonderful, her theatricality, her sexual allure, her shifts of mood, her intellect, her wit, her cunning, are the very qualities that the Romans distrust and despise. And Mark Antony is still, after all, part of the Roman world. So, Beware of oversimplification. You will still read some critics who insist that Antony and Cleopatra is the tragedy of a divided man. Antony torn between love on the one hand and power, politics, and duty on the other. There is some truth in this claim, but it is a very limited truth. Rather, Shakespeare is examining the difficulty of reconciling all elements of being human. Whereas the Roman opponents of Antony take refuge in stereotypes, Antony and Cleopatra are unafraid to confront humanity with all its gifts and its imperfections. They strive to express humanity in its entirety. Many students ask about Shakespeare's sources for his Roman plays, and his major source was Plutarch's Lives of the Great Greeks and Romans, and it was translated by the Renaissance scholar North, N-O-R-T-H. In Plutarch, there is this wonderful description of Antony and Cleopatra. Plutarch insists that the two lovers strove to make between them a matchless life, no life comparable to it, and they called it by the name Amima Toibion. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it is spelt A-M-I-M-E-T-O-B-I-O-N. And Plutarch insists this means the matchless life. No life can surpass it. Historically, Cleopatra apparently wore a large amethyst ring with the word for intoxication engraved upon it. And by intoxication, she did not, of course, mean drunkenness. She rather meant the heightened awareness of all joys, all aspects of human existence. So when Cleopatra reminisces about her relationship with Mark Antony to Charmian and Iris, she delights in all aspects of that relationship. She delights in the role-playing, even what we would nowadays call gender-bender role-playing. She remembers that she once donned Antony's supreme symbol of masculine military power, his sword Philippon, the sword that he used at the Battle of Philippi to defeat the conspirators and assassins of Julius Caesar. And she, Cleopatra herself, has dressed Antony at times in her female garments, her tires and mantles, as she calls them. Both the lovers delight at times in wandering the streets incognito, posing as ordinary people, observing ordinary human life. They are great rulers and simply human beings whose love relationship includes teasing, mockery, game play. And far from being horrified by these games, Antony and Cleopatra revel in them. This is part of the matchless life, the life that cannot be surpassed. One of the most famous phrases in Antony and Cleopatra is the reference to Cleopatra's infinite variety. But it is important to recognize that Cleopatra herself sees infinite variety in Mark Antony. After he leaves her in Act 1 to return to Rome, she torments herself with memories of their lovemaking. In explicitly erotic language, she envies the horse that bears the weight of Antony. On the other hand, though, once she hears that Antony, when he took his leave from Egypt, when he finally departed, was neither too sad nor too joyous, but his emotions seemed to be in perfect balance. Cleopatra praises that balance. It is at that point that she uses the memorable phrase, heavenly mingle. Antony's disposition is, as she puts it, a well-divided disposition. And it is such divisions, it is this union of contradictory elements that actually creates great human beings. In short, both lovers are a heavenly mingle of very human qualities. And this would seem to be a good point at which to conclude this first lecture on Antony and Cleopatra. We have explored the characters of the lovers. We have laid the groundwork. In the subsequent lectures, we will examine in more detail the conflict between Rome and Egypt and the transformation that Antony and Cleopatra undergo as they move towards their tragic deaths.